Duggan, Remax Boulder Video Podcast. We have Gina Weinberger from Weinberger Law here at Remax Boulder with us. And today we're going to talk about tenants in common. Gina, thanks for being here today.
Hey, Duane, thanks for having me.
So, tenants in common. One of the things that's happening in our market today, prices are going up so dramatically that people are sometimes combining efforts with others in order to purchase their personal residence. So,
that's right.
What is tenants in common, first of all?
So, tenants in common is one form of multi-person ownership. So you have tenants in common, which means there are multiple owners, each with a kind of a fraction of ownership, distinguished from joint tenancy, which is where you can have multiple owners and their ownership kind of blends. So they own the whole thing together and they have overlapping ownerships. And there are nuances, but what I think we want to talk about today are tenants in common.
Okay, and then the big difference is the right of survivorship, right, between joint tenancy and tenants in common?
That's right. So with tenants in common, there is no right of survivorship. So it really makes sense when you have owners that don't have blended financial lives.
Okay.
If you have owners who have blended financial lives, like a married couple, joint tenancy might be more appropriate.
Perfect. Okay, so let's say that we have two people that know each other. They're not married. They want to buy a place in Boulder, Colorado because of the prices.
Mm-hmm.
What's the agreement actually called other than just putting like tenants in common on the deed?
Yeah, so they'll take title as tenants in common,
Okay.
and you'll see that on the deed. Or if you don't see anything, it just sort of defaults to tenants in common. But what I really encourage people to do in the scenario like you're describing, where they know each other, but they're really co-owning as a way to leverage what they own, is actually executing a private party agreement called a tenancy in common agreement. And this tenancy in common agreement clarifies, and it's better if it's done beforehand, who's going to be paying for what. Are they going 50-50 on expenses? When the deal ends, when they sell 10 years from now, how is that divided? And you can kind of work in some buy-sell arrangements. So if you want to have the opportunity to buy someone out, you can kind of face that ahead of time. So this way, you're clarifying your relationship before things get complicated. Because
Okay.
it's harder to deal with things when they become complicated.
And once you come up with this agreement, what do you do with it? Who keeps it? Because it's not recorded, right?
You don't usually want to record it. Sometimes you can record maybe a memo so people know that there is an agreement.
Mm-hmm.
The parties themselves keep it, and
Okay.
that they enforce it among themselves. Because it's really not intended for third parties to enforce it. It's intended just to outline what that agreement is between the owners.
Okay, would that go in like somebody's estate planning file, or
Yeah, that's a good place for it.
Okay.
I like that idea.
especially for an estate planning attorney, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, one of the things that we've seen in our marketplace too is the multi-generation of families coming together again to conserve expenses and kind of combine resources. So have you had any experience with this concept in multi-generational?
That's actually when I use it the most, and I did
Okay.
one just last month where you have a young couple, 30s, early 40s, with kids of their own, who they want to buy a house, and now their parents, grandma and grandpa, might want to relocate out here. So this is what happened with my clients. And so they had 3 generations living in this house. So my clients, the middle generation, and their parents, so 4 people total, went in on this property, and we had a tenancy in common agreement signed by all of them beforehand, so they knew how expenses were to be paid.
Okay.
Because the common scenario, especially with this particular fact pattern, is folks my age, folks in their 30s or 40s, they might have a good monthly income, but what they might not have is a down payment.
Right.
And so you can take older generations' savings and really leverage that with a younger working person's monthly income and actually be able to afford to live out here.
Perfect. And I actually heard you call it something that some of the builders are calling these multi-generation homes.
Yeah, so at least Lennar. So Lennar's building these out
Okay.
in Erie, and they call it a super home, which I think is great. And at least what Lennar's doing, and they're not the only folks doing stuff like this, but they're making, it's sort of like 2 houses smushed together, a smaller one, probably for grandma and grandpa, and then the larger one for the younger family. And then they each have their own entrance, and then they can access each unit from inside. So
Gotcha.
It's a super home.
So when is it important for people to contact you? I mean, when they go out and see the builder to sign the contract, and it's for a home just like you just described, Should they see you beforehand, or they get the house bought in their individual names and then come to you before closing to prepare this agreement?
I recommend you do it ahead of time when they're contemplating, what property they want to buy. Because if there are going to be issues, you're going to uncover these issues when you're
Right.
discussing the terms of your agreement. So I think
Starting
it's
with who's
better.
going to write the earnest money check, right?
That's right. Yeah,
So that'd be
exactly.
to,
Exactly. Who's going to apply for the loan? Is everyone going to apply for the loan?
Well, perfect. Thanks for sharing some of these ideas to help
Sure.
folks deal with prices in today's market. So, and Gina, if somebody wants to get a hold of you to talk about this some more, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so they can find me online. My website's GinaWeinbergerLaw.com, or they can call me at 720-588-9830.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ray.